Welcome to Brothers in Aerospace and Defense, the podcast that dives deep into the world of aerospace and defense with a unique perspective. I'm your P&L host, DeWayne Allen.
And I'm Rob Wesley, your technical host.
Together, we explore the dynamic intersection of strategy, innovation, and impact in aerospace and defense. We'll spotlight the trends shaping the industry and Black excellence driving it forward.
And today we're diving deep into the world of deep space exploration. And that's where engineering meets economics and who's all leading the charge.
We'll unpack the numbers, spotlight the investors and companies making the biggest moves beyond Earth's orbit after this quick news update. Let's get to the newsreel. Here's some quick headlines shaping the space market at this moment, right? So we got Firefly Aerospace IPO. Was valued at $10 billion. It raised $868 million and holds 1.1 in contract backlog. It's working the NASA CLPS mission to lunar South Pole, right? And that should be done in 2029. Axiom Space Investment, they just raised another $100 million, valuing the company at $2 billion, which is in the first throes of world's first commercial space station, right? And then lastly, just for some trends from the space capital perspective, you know, the U.S. space industry is now having about 52% of private equity that's leading in the space market. So that's a big investment. That tells you that the money is where they're moving towards there, Rob. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, those numbers really show that deep space is no longer sci-fi. It's really business at this point. You see all the investments going into these companies, you know, building the new technology.
Right.
You see private equity taking a spotlight saying, you know, who's building this journey to Mars, going to other planets, deep space exploration. I'm excited to see where everything goes.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be pretty awesome when you see the new money get moved in. It helps move it forward. And in our capitalistic society, you know, money makes mountains move, right? So we're going to get there, right?
Yep.
That's it for that. The newsreel. Let's get into the main segment. We're going to talk about deep space and the business of data and players. Now, Rob, we just heard the news on what's happening in deep space. Let's talk about some of the macroeconomics according to the experts, right? According to my notes here, Price Waterhouse Cooper says the global space economy hit $570 billion in 2023, and it's growing at like 7% annually a year, with 80% of it being mostly tied into commercial revenue, which makes sense, right? Defense is based into, defense businesses, right? Also, by Morgan Stanley, they estimate that the space industry is about $350 billion today, with potential of exceeding $1 trillion by 2040. You got global VCs, and we talked about that earlier. They're into the market. They got $4.5 billion spread across 48 companies. And then they got another 4X, expecting another 4X by more than what was last year. So that's 4 times what they did last year. And then you got these space unicorns that's out here like SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Relativity Space. Let me say that right. And they have a lot into the market space too. So any of your thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, I think what we're now seeing is a lot of the new, like you said, new money investing into the business. So you're seeing a lot of these new companies kind of popping up. I know we talked about Anduril and others in the past, but you see SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Relativity Space, all these new players are in the environment now, in the ecosystem, what you call it. It's good to see. It's good. Creates the competition from a commercial, from a defense standpoint, but also it's like who's bringing the technology there to us the fastest. And then how can you piecemeal the projects and the technology to, you know, really support the greater vision of the world. But, you know, from a business standpoint, you know, where do you see like the VCs playing the major role going forward?
The VCs always following the big boys, right? And the big boys in the market right now, we talked about it like SpaceX, and they got this, they all about launches, right? You know, and they just launched, they got the big 1850 total payload tons of, leveraging what we're doing from the Falcon, and then they got this cost target of like $100 per kilogram, or what they're trying to do from a payload perspective. That's fun, but Elon Musk is behind it, so it's going to happen, right? Then you got Firefly. All right, we talked about them already. They got a lot of NASA contracts that they're working. That's a part of it. They're a big player in the market. Of course, Firefly is being backed by Northrop Grumman, so no bigger player in the space business than those big guys. You got Rocket Lab. They're expanding into deep space. Got that Photon spacecraft that's coming out. All right, have you seen that? That's pretty cool. You should look that up. And then you got Etherflux, right? And they just doing all the solar power that's happening, man. So it's, between, you got a great mix of the big boys backing the little guys, and then you got, the big behemoth known as SpaceX. Whenever they come out with what they come out, post that, it's always big news, and as well as the money's going to follow that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that's kind of, really segues into our next segment as far as who's investing, who's building it. I know L3 Harris has a, investment, interest in this space as well. But, can you tell me some players that stand out from your perspective from a business standpoint?
L3 Harris is in the game, like you talked about. Boeing is always in the game. You got Northrop Grumman, and it's old business, Orbital Sciences, that's behind it. That's a big part of what's going on as well. As we get into more of, the business piece of it, now I think we can transition over to what's happening from a engineering perspective. Like, what's the real challenges that these guys are doing? You got a lot of money there. What's the real challenges? So, I think it's a good segue for us to kick off to where it comes together, and put on your thinking cap and share with the audience what you think is really the hurdles that's getting us there.
Yeah, I think when we talk about deep space, the technical hurdles multiply compared to the low Earth orbit. And I really look at this as far as categories that I would, break this down into. And I see four major ones: radiation protection. The next one is really propulsion beyond chemical rockets. Third one being life support and habitability, and lastly being in situ resource utilization. So I'll further break those down a little bit further right now. So really taking into consideration radiation protection. Once you leave Earth's magnetic shield, radiation becomes lethal over multi-year missions. So those cosmic rays, that solar particle events that can cause acute radiation sickness, organ damage, and increased cancer risk. So the current solution really is the polyethyl-based shielding. So in the spacecraft, and that's advanced composites and potential use of low lunar and the covered habitats. So it's really taking all into consideration, making sure that the humans and anyone else that are going into the atmosphere are protected. And then NASA is currently testing storm shelters inside Orion capsules as a near-term fix. From a futuristic standpoint, research is going into that magnetic shielding and plasma fields to mimic the Earth's atmosphere or magnetosphere.
Right. When you think about, we got radiation is just the one of the big drivers of, of what happens in space, right? You got all these things you got to protect. The human body is not built for, right? And it's a cost driver to the business too, right? So that shielding alone adds weight, right? So weight is, as in any type of flight environment, weight costs money, right? Weight means you need more, you need better materials, you need things to be lighter, you need the shielding to happen. The storm shelters is that's tested out there, and they're already kind of used already on the space station out inside for Orion and other things. There's always a protective storm shelter type capability. Very, very expensive materials, but if you can solve this thing, right, is not only help us from a technical perspective for people to stay out in space longer, it definitely helps, reduce the cost of going into deep space, which is one of those things, right? So what is it? What is one of the other ones, Rob? What is one of the other big killers?
Yeah, so I think the second big killer is really about propulsion beyond chemical rockets. So that chemical propulsion got us to the moon, but Mars missions need more efficient systems. So those efficient systems are really like the nuclear thermal propulsion. So DARPA and NASA's DRACO program is aiming for this first test to be in 2027, and that NTP, which is the nuclear thermal propulsion, could cut out Mars travel time from 9 months to 4 to 6 months. So that's a tremendous amount of time cut from a travel standpoint. So that's to your point, less cost, more advanced technology, less time in the atmosphere, that harsh atmospheres for humans. The second one being ion and Hall effect thrusters. So it's already being used in satellites for station keeping, scaling up for those deep space probes, but also NASA's Psyche mission uses solar electric propulsion. So that's electric is becoming a new way of thinking propulsion into space, which is great to see. And then lastly, I would hit on fusion concepts. So this is really still experimental. But private players like Helicity Space are exploring these future drives, which is, like you said, is futuristic, but it's really early in the development stage.
Yeah, it's all at the atomic stages, right? When you think about fusion and power and grabbing that, right? Either it's atomic fusion, it's hydrogen fusion, even nuclear fusion, to get you there faster from a propulsion perspective, right? Because it's all about that VBO, right? The velocity to get us out of there, because you get off the ground, but you really got to sustain that for a while. And nuclear propulsion, always, anytime you put the word nuclear in something, it's money, right? That's just how it is, because it's from a safety perspective and what we're doing. Even though it gives you the power it needs, there has to be the safety precautions that you got to take to get there to make it work. And then that DRACO program right now, it's like funded like $500 million over the next 5 years. Yeah. And if it works, it can help with the logistics and give us shorter mission cycles and less life support. So again, the shorter the time to get to deep space, the shorter to get us to Mars, that happens. But again, technically, you got to solve that propulsion problem to get there. What's another one that we got, Rob?
Yeah, the next one is the life support and habitability. So that's for Artemis and Mars. We need closed loop environmental control and life support system. So that's ECLSS. So that recycling 99% of water from urine, sweat, and condensation. That's absolutely useful. Regenerating oxygen via electrolysis, and also growing food in consumable and controlled habitats. So those are the main areas where we see reusable foods, reusable water, helpful in deep space. So radiation and microgravity also damage the human physiology. So they're also researching artificial gravity through rotating habitats, which is something I had never seen before. So in researching this out, I was glad to see there's a lot of this being thought of. And that's like that advanced exercise regime. So it's like basically recreating your own gravity in outer space.
Yeah, that ECLSS is a thing I had the pleasure of working with, and seeing some of the guys work it when I was in my Collins life, working in the space systems business. Right, the ECLSS thing is real. It is what can we do to ensure that human life stays alive, right? As long as, because you got water needs, you got oxygen needs, you got organic feed needs, and then you got just the overall comfort too, right? So you can operate and be in that deep space environment, because it's just you're not coming back home for a while, right? You're not coming back to the planet at home for a while, so you got to make sure there's an environment there to deal with, right? So it's important. There's the business case there. All these systems are will be dual use, right? You got that closed loop water recycling is not just for Mars, right? They're using it, also testing it to see the sustainability of that on Earth, right? And actually, you have a lot of investors that's dealing with those ECLSS type systems to do that here on the planet, right? And then also, you got to have something once you get to Mars. You got to maintain human life while you're on the planet of Mars, right?
It's all about survivability.
It's all about survivability, baby. And so, we have to really think through the capabilities and test those capabilities, and they have to test them, which is, I think, is cool about space exploration. They test the capabilities of what they need to the planet while they're in space before they get to the planet, right?
Yeah.
and so, I mean, it's I know all the space nerds, when we get on our podcast, gonna have a lot to say about it. But for us people who are on the peripheral, who are really trying to learn it, the ECLSS thing is real. It's a real deal. It's a real deal. Right. What about this? Our last one that we want to share with the rest of with the audience here.
Yeah. So that last one is about in situ resource utilization. So that's ISRU. And that's hauling everything from Earth. It's unsustainable in outer space and deep space. So the RSU means what's already there. So that lunar ice for fuel and water, that regolith for 3D printing habitats, extracting oxygen directly from lunar soil. And, to that point, NASA's MOXIE program demo has already proved oxygen extraction from CO2 on Mars, which is like hands down amazing work being done by that team. But like I said, we need to reutilize those resources, because not only is it going to take 4 to 6 months, ideally, from Earth to Mars, but also while you're there, it's going to take a while just to, do everything, do all the testing, all the experiments you need to do there, and then come back. So you're looking at years being in deep space at this point.
Right. What's driving this also from an in situ perspective, right, is there's ice. So, I mean, if there's ice, then there's water. There's some water source. If there's some water source, there's potentially some living sources. There's some other living minerals that we can utilize while we're there on planet, right? And so we need habitats to be created on there. That's happening. The lunar vehicles that we have that rolls around, that's on there, that shows us there. And then the MOXIE demo that's just happened. Getting that oxygen off that soil and getting that direct from the soil goes back to our last piece of the ECLSS piece. If I can get oxygen from the planet, then I don't have to utilize when I'm getting back in space to get back home, right? So I can utilize those there. Also, which the quiet secret on this part is there's also a lot of precious minerals and things like that that's on these that we've proven to be on these planets as well, which is also driving the economic impact of people wanting to invest to get these precious metals that's going to be needed is there, right? So, and the economics around that is crystal clear, right? NASA says it's going to take about $10,000 per kilogram to launch material into space, right? And each kilo you don't spend on a launch is what save money, and whatever we can use there helps reduce the cost of me to get there. And then it also creates these commodity markets, which I was leading to, that's also dealing with the economics that can go around because of the precious metals that's on planet, right? So that's really cool to see what we got going on. So lot happening there and things you do. Any other thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, no, I just thought of a bonus add to this whole conversation about the tech and deep space. So it's really about communications and autonomy. So in deep space, you're minutes to hours away from Earth and communication delays. So I know you hear lags sometimes in video calls, things like that. But in deep space, you're minutes to hours in lags. For Mars, the one-way signal lag is up to 22 minutes. And then for a spacecraft need an AI-driven autonomy to make real-time decisions, whether it's rerouting power, fixing a malfunction, or conducting experiments, all that type of communication needs to be back and forth to NASA and home base, readily available and as quickly as possible. And also NASA's expanding the Deep Space Network, the DSN, with more powerful antennas and laser communication like the DSOC demo on Psych.
Right, like comms is, comms and data fusion. That's always going to be important, right? How do we know what's going on? How do you get up there? What's going to happen? How do you share the data that you learn? We see autonomy is going to play a big part in that. On this side, there are a bunch of mission controllers that are managing data coming back and forth anytime we're in space. What happens if we can reduce that capability from an autonomy to help with that decision making with power and malfunctions and things like that? And also just to share the data while it's in space, how to get there from to get back. That's where that deep space network is going to come into play with the antennas and the lasers and things like that to move forward. So that's an exciting piece that what this, we've been talking about it a lot, about this AI and autonomy and things like that, the things that we got to do on the ground, as well as to help making sure the comms are in place for us to get the signals that we need to know what's happening on planet and what's all and in space, but also how can we help ensure some things that's going down if something goes down from that perspective. So you want to close this out there, Rob?
Yeah, I'll close it out. So in my mind, deep space demands solving radiation, propulsion, and life support. In your mind, what are some key business takeaways you want everyone to take away for this episode, DeWayne?
There's a big market out there, right? It's one saying over $500 billion a day that's there, and then it's going to be towards the trillions by 2040. So a lot to move forward. There's a lot of capital momentum there from a VC perspective that's moving in, and some of the smaller firms backed by the big firms are moving us forward from that perspective.
And the moon is also the stepping stone. So Mars and asteroid mining are further off, but today's investments set the rules. So it really sets the precedence of what's going to be possible going forward. For investors, this is the infrastructure, ownership, and growth, and who builds the stations, depots, and defines the space economy. So, I mean, we're right the tip of the iceberg right now as far as defining what's going to be reality in the next, like you said, to 2040.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So Rob, what else is happening in your personal life there, brother?
I think I'm coming up towards the end of this renovation of the house. I will celebrate at the end of this month that we'll be finally finished with everything. I'm happy that we moved in and we made the transition really well, the family and the little ones. So I'm thoroughly happy with the transition right now to the new home.
Excellent.
What about you, DeWayne? What have you been up to lately?
For me, man, it's prime time season, right? I just got back from the NSB PDC, did a leadership session there on executive presence, which was cool. We got all the major, I want to say, services conferences are coming up. AFA is coming up. AUSA is coming up. I'll be in DC like 4 or 5 times in a 6 week period. So you'll see me a lot, Rob. Then something that I'm particularly